Hey guys, welcome to Chasing Gains Radio, episode 6. Today we've got an amazing episode with Dr. Mike Israetel. This was a hilarious episode. We go through a lot of content, everything to do with powerlifting, bodybuilding, all the priorities behind that, getting drunk the night before your comp, and how that can benefit drying you out, and much, much more. Be sure to listen to the entire podcast. There's lots and lots of great information. This is by far the best podcast we've done yet. You have to listen to the whole thing. And get all the information. So let's get into it. Chasing Gains Radio, the insatiable quest for constant progression. Chasing is the act of pursuing. Gains is the result or positive outcome. Chasing Gains Radio. Here's your host, Cody McAuliffe. Welcome to episode 6 of Chasing Gains Radio. Today we've got an amazing guest. We've got Dr. Mike Israetel, who's a PhD in sports physiology and assistant professor. He's been an assistant professor at both Temple University in Florida and the University of Central Missouri. He's got a background in being a competitive athlete in multiple sports, martial arts, bodybuilding, and powerlifting. And he's done consulting for the US Olympic training site in Johnson City. So, welcome, Dr. Mike. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Do you mind giving listeners a bit of a introduction about your history, kind of in the fitness industry, how you got into it, all your training experience as well?
Sure. I started out as a child.
Most people
Just
do.
kidding. Most of us did.
Some of us still are as well.
I consider myself one. I started wrestling in high school.
Yeah.
And I started lifting weights to try to get stronger for wrestling and to try to improve my physical appearance. And then eventually I fell in love so much with lifting weights that I kind of fell out of wrestling by the end of high school.
Yeah.
And I ended up starting powerlifting in college. And in college I also started learning more about the science behind training, because once getting strong was really important to me. I wanted to make sure that I knew the science behind it, because to me, I think science was probably, in my view, the way to learn as much as possible about how to get strong. And eventually I ended up getting my PhD in sport physiology, so kind of the science of training athletes. Yeah, cool. And in addition to that, I competed in powerlifting for a while, and then I started competing in bodybuilding. And I currently still am involved in competitive bodybuilding. And then 2.5-ish years ago, I started to return back to my wrestling roots, I guess, and picked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for my cardio for bodybuilding. And that's been really, 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 really fun. And I've been doing that very consistently for 2 years. And for the foreseeable future, I'll continue to bodybuild and do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu until something breaks off or something like that.
Okay, cool. So our radio station's called Chasing Gains Radio. So chasing is like the act of pursuing, gains is like the result or outcome. What kind of outcomes are you working towards, say, with your bodybuilding at the moment? So what's the end goal?
Well, the end goal is to be as big and lean as possible. With a certain number of constraints, and I suppose symmetry and all that stuff goes in there, but really then you're just asking if you want to increase certain muscle group sizes more than others, right? And then for my jiu-jitsu components, gains would be gains in technical ability. And I suppose most of your listeners are probably not interested in that kind of thing. Probably more interested in the bodybuilding. Is that a correct assumption for me to make?
Yeah, the majority of people, but it's always good to open your horizons.
Sure. Well, mostly I can talk about the bodybuilding training, because I take my bodybuilding training currently more seriously than I do my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training. And it's not to say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu isn't very important to me. It's just that bodybuilding is taking precedence currently. So I do approach that pretty much full steam ahead. Do you find that the training for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in any way kind of takes away from your bodybuilding training, like energy levels or just the amount of time that you have to put into it? On the net balance, it absolutely does. So the good news is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu allows me to get to get leaner more easily, because it's such huge energy expenditure. I don't do any cardio anymore, other than I don't do any incline walking or anything like that. I just do jiu-jitsu, and it's huge energy expenditure. So I can drop weight really quickly. I can drop fat really quickly. It probably does cost me in muscle mass to some extent.
Yeah.
And it definitely, in one of the ways it does that is it does increase injury risk. Really it presents a new injury risk.
Yeah.
I'm currently have to change my squatting technique to something that's not the best thing in the world because I hurt my knee doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And it's a combat sport. So it's definitely not optimal. I've had a couple people approach me since I started doing jiu-jitsu and saying, how do you balance jiu-jitsu and bodybuilding? There are, of course, very good sports science ways to balance the two and to make sure that they interfere with each other the least, but you're accepting some level of interference. I would not – a couple of people asked me if I'd recommend BJJ cardio for bodybuilding. Absolutely not. I mean, if you want to get lean, but there's going to come with some risks and some high level of fatigue. It's going to limit your bodybuilding development for sure.
Yeah. I had someone ask me on the weekend if they could do Olympic lifting as part of their cardio for bodybuilding, and if it would have like massive amounts of carryover. And I kind of said the same thing. So it just depends like on how much you're doing. And obviously if you're focusing on one more than the other, obviously that's going to be your priority. And that's one of those things that you talk about a lot, priorities. So I'll get you to explain the idea of having priorities and why setting them out beforehand is going to be important.
Mm-hmm. Well, so there's I think priorities in every single facet of life. Anytime you have essentially two conditions, you will have priorities. One is a goal that you value, and the other condition is a finite amount of resources. As soon as those two conditions are met, priorities necessarily result from that structure. There's no other way to do it. If you value all goals evenly, and if then you don't have priorities, that's fine. If you have one goal that you value more than another, but you have infinite resources, which would also involve infinite time, which of course is impossible as far as we know, then that you wouldn't have priorities. So basically, because time is limited as at least one of the resources, and of course energy, recovery ability, training time, how much you can spend on supplements and food, how many hours there are on the day to worry about these things, and because people generally have their goals pretty – people generally have a really good feel of what goals are important to them, what goals maybe aren't as important to them. And that automatically sets up a priority structure for if you want to get bigger muscles, there's a priority structure there of what's most important, what's least, everything in between. If you want to burn fat, there's a priority structure. If you want to become better at sport performance, if you want to get stronger, and so on down the line. So priorities are very important. And I think a big mistake that some people make is to view things I don't know if it's a bit too optimistically or what, but they think, I can have it all. I can be good at all three sports, and I can get lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, and all these wonderful things. Well, I only wish that was the case. And so priorities are not born out of the fact that a sports scientist got together and said, we need to make this fucking complicated, right? They're born out of the idea that this is just unfortunate reality that what is it? One of the kind of really quirky, quick definitions of economics is, if you can't have it all, where would you put it? Right? So you can't have it all. Where are you going to put your efforts to have the most out of what you really value? So priorities are super, super important in training it. And the next thing I'd like to say really quick, knowing which priorities are the important ones is the next question. A lot of people recognize priorities, but some people have their priorities shifted. They'll say things like, nutrient timing is the most important thing in diet. Like, oh boy, you can do all kinds of interesting stuff if you really think that's the case. Yeah. I find that a lot with a lot of my clients as well. So a lot of people will ask, that's the most common one, nutrient timing. How important is that? So what are your, say, like big rocks when it comes to, say, nutrition, in regards to bodybuilding? So what would be the number one priority, and where would kind of nutrient timing fit into the So number one priority would be, if you want to gain weight, you should increase your calorie intake. If you want to lose fat, you should decrease your calorie intake. That necessarily means you can't do both at the same time with any super crazy results, which is probably what you shouldn't do or shouldn't try to do. And then in addition to that, macros come after that, higher protein intake, carbs paired to training volumes, at least as many fats as takes to operate all the, body machinery that requires fats, so minimum amounts. After that, meal timing probably is, from our calculations at Renaissance Periodization, we think it's probably about 10% of total effect on body composition, which is to say the following, that, if you take someone who develops their entire bodybuilding career eating with 2 meals a day, okay, and then you take someone whose entire bodybuilding career, let's say they're identical twin, okay, and the only thing they did differently was they ate 7 times per day and make sure their carbohydrate was appropriately sourced pre, during, and post-workout, etc. The reality is that we predict that there's probably only going to be a 10% total difference in how much muscle they've gained and how much fat they've lost over their entire career. So to use the biggest unit of time, let's say, man, you can gain maybe 80 pounds of muscle over a bodybuilding career. That's 8 pounds. Now, so let's ask ourselves this. Is 8 pounds the difference between a pro bodybuilder and someone who's never trained before? Of course not. 8 pounds is, there are guys on the Olympia stage within 30 pounds of each other, right? So 8 pounds isn't huge. But then again, if you're standing next to a guy in a bodybuilding stage and the only thing he has on you is 8 pounds of muscle, he's going to beat your ass and you're going to take 4th place instead of 2nd like you thought you were going to. So, nutrient timing is not super important. If you think it's going to make a difference of 80 pounds, you've got another thing coming. But if you can just say, timing doesn't matter at all, I'm just going to eat once a day, good luck. Your results are going to be pretty good. But a lot of us are not in this sport to get good results. We want to get the best results. I mean, Christ's sake, a lot of bodybuilders listen to this podcast. We're standing up on stage basically naked. Are you okay presenting almost a good job when you're fucking naked? No, I'd like to be the best I can be, right? I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the important thing there is, with that example, it would be only 10% if everything else was the same. So the same calorie intake, same training, everything as well. Is that right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, let me turn on some lights really quick.
Yeah, you're right.
It gets dark immediately in the middle of the day nowadays. You're in where are you at? You in Australia?
Yeah, Brisbane, Australia.
Oh, okay, so it's like really light over there now, right?
Yeah, it's pretty early in the morning. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning, so the sun's just coming up, so it's good.
You guys are spoiled rotten over there. I just hope you remember that.
Yeah, we are. It's always good. Might get laid by the pool today a little bit later, so that'll be fun. Just living the dream.
Great. I'm going to go jump into a frozen swimming pool and crack my neck. Just to try to fit in.
Cool. So do you mind telling me a little bit about Renaissance Periodization, like where the name comes from, what you guys actually do?
Yeah, totally. So the name kind of has two sources, 2 derivatives. The first one, and probably the biggest one, is that the Renaissance period of history was a time during which, kind of stereotypically, people started thinking again. They started trying to understand the world from a rational, logical, scientific perspective, rather than the voodoo and mysticism of the super crazy dark ages that preceded it. And when Nick and I started the company, we kind of, we spent a lot of time in New York City, and we interacted with a lot of personal trainers there and some pretty high-level bodybuilders. And we heard some really good stuff, but we also heard stuff like, you need to see this and this guru knows what he's doing. Oh, you need to do your diet like this. And we'd say, why? And they'd say, you fucking ask too many questions, or, it's obvious these guys are lean and ripped. Of course they know what they're doing. And there was just a total misunderstandings of science, total lack of desire to learn science, and no formalized methods. And it was really, it really pissed us off because, people would ask us, what's your training philosophy? And we'd be like, well, periodization. And they'd be like, what's that? Is that like 5 through 1? Or just like, fuck. Then not everything has a name. So it's just, it's okay to kind of do your own thing as long as it's guided by the, basic principles. But when you don't know the basic principles, you have to give people names for stuff. So, and then secondly, there was Nick and I trained a lot of people in the finance industry, and there is a company called Renaissance Technologies that trades stocks, to put simply what they do. And they hire vast numbers, unlike many other companies in their field, they hire vast numbers of PhDs in mathematics, computer science, and physics. And these PhDs run supercomputers, and they crack equations and formulas all the time.
Yeah.
They crank them out, and they have automatic trading. So basically, they trade a lot of their stocks. It's not a person picking stocks. It's a computer deciding when to buy and sell.
Yeah.
So it's basically the application of math and science directly to the stock market. And when I heard, the way that Renaissance name was introduced to me, I was talking to a client I was training, and I was like, did this and that company lose money last year or whatever? And this was right after the big financial collapse. Yeah. And, or it was like, does this and this company, are they back on track to making money? And he's like, no one's really, doing that kind of thing unless you're Rentec. And I was like, what's Rentec? And he's like, Renaissance Technologies. I was like, what about them? He's like, they're not like anything else. Yeah. Nobody can figure out what the hell they're doing back there. It's some kind of secret supercomputer operation. Yeah. And I was just awestruck by the idea. I was like, holy crap. And the guy who founded it was a code breaker back in the World War II. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, like these people literally went on the quest to develop formulas for solving stock market equations. Like that's unbelievable. Yeah. They used pure science, no guesses, no hunches, I think the stock's going to go up or down. Yeah. They just ran the numbers. And that's what we've been seeking to do at Renaissance Periodization, kind of taking that very general approach of, I think there's a place for coaching wisdom. Yeah. I think there's a place for hunches. But that place has been too much in the fitness industry for a long time. Yeah, and we're trying to take it back to where we do a little bit more on the calculation side, a little bit more on the formal science side. Yeah. We have a ton of PhDs that work for us, and we think they do a pretty good job. So that's kind of the long answer of how our company was named. But I guess there it also describes kind of what we do. Yeah. If you are working with one of our coaches or if you buy one of our products, we never just say, hey, do this. Yeah. And if you ask us why, we say, well, just listen to your coach. Never, ever, ever. You will always get a very in-depth explanation, or we will send you to a source that can give you that in-depth explanation. Yeah. Because we don't do anything by chance. We don't like that. We don't get paid money to do things by chance. If you want to do things by chance, you can just fucking write your own diet. So we want to make sure we're giving people proper explanations as to what we're doing. Yeah. And if we don't know why we're doing it, we don't do it. Yeah. So that's our approach. Yeah,
awesome. Definitely see that a lot in the fitness industry. The whole bro approach to everything is still big, and sure. Having people like you trying to change that is really good for the fitness industry, and it's definitely helping change it and improve it as well. So that's great.
Totally.
So you do. Can I just get you to give your definition of periodization as well, just for those people who are used to the bro approach?
Yeah, sure. Periodization is a really, really broad term. It's technically something like, the manipulation of training variables to accomplish long-term performance improvements and prevent long-term injury development. And a third sub-definition is to peak for competition at appropriate times. Yeah. Right? Because there's a little bit of a difference between getting better all the time and making sure you're the best at the competition you chose. Yeah. Like you could have put on 50 pounds on your total last year, but the day you chose to do a meet, you could have planned things incorrectly and have been a bit weak or tired, and then you can't actually show off any of those improvements. So that's periodization, and it's a very big definition, but it really means what the difference between periodization and a bro approach is that bro approach is basically like you show up to a workout, you look at your other bro, and then you're like, what do you want to do, bro? And he's like, yeah, man. And then you guys just decide what the workout is, play by ear, play by feel. Periodization implies that there's going to be some kind of planning component.
Yeah, structure.
That's right. It's a structured approach to training. And the structure is derived through the knowledge of sports science from years and years of research and experience, and as well as the knowledge of how your own body has responded in previous phases of training. Yeah. And there absolutely is a place in modern periodization for using how you feel in a variety of ways to plan training and to modify training even during the session. But they have to be put in context. Maybe 80 or 90% of the structure is determined already, and you're going to whittle with a couple of small things here and there to make sure it's optimized. Yeah. But it really goes against the idea of just coming in and being like, have no clue what the hell you're going to do, and then just doing it. But a lot of times people, to attack the scientific side, will miscaricature, will straw man periodization as like you got these 97.5%, and that's exactly what you have to lift every day, and that's not a properly applied version of periodization.
Yeah, okay. So you talked about like peaking for an event like for powerlifting. What kind of tips would you give to someone who's just about to start training for their first powerlifting competition?
How far out are they?
Let's just say that, gonna do it in 3 months. 3 months is normally what most people. Yeah, so got a strong base.
Sure. So if you have a really strong muscular base in 3 months, I think for 2 months you should train in rep ranges of about 3 to 5 reps.
Yeah.
Anywhere for the same muscle / movements, anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
So don't get into this routine where you just squat once a week. That's probably pretty stupid for most people.
Yeah.
And that you should progressively make your weights heavier, deload every 4 to 6 weeks, take a light week every 4 to 6 weeks to make sure you recover, which might occur 2 times during that 3-month period.
Yeah.
And then, as you get closer to that 3-rep range towards the end of that first 2-month period, you're going to start to go through a peaking phase where things are going to get really, really hard for a while. You're going to be doing a lot of volume and intensity at the same time, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks out.
Yeah.
And then 1 week out, you're going to be training really, really heavy, but with not a lot of sets. Maybe very few, maybe 2 sets per movement, but you're going to be doing maybe doubles or something super heavy. And then the last week, at the beginning of the week, you might still train really, really heavy, but take very, very few lifts, maybe just singles or doubles.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of that first week is super light weights, super low reps, barely anything. You basically just come in and warm up and then you leave so that you can really, really drop that fatigue. And then your ability to generate strength is super duper high. Your fatigue is super duper low. And you should come to the meet feeling not remotely beat up, but you should feel like you haven't really trained heavy in a while. And you should be pissed. And that's when you know you're going to do a really, really good job.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the basics. And I think some common things to avoid are never taking weights that are so heavy that they feel remotely like your 1RM. I think we've all been there when we tried to hit a 1RM and the last thing we hit is like a 5RM and we're like, fuck, this feels completely different. I can barely walk it out.
Yeah.
You see some things that powerlifting means people don't pick their attempts correctly. They have trouble unracking the bar. Have you ever seen that before?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh God, this is not going to go well for that person. So make sure you get some heavy weight on your back, but at the same time, don't just do singles for 6 weeks straight because you can get pretty close to the same effect with doubles and triples, but you get more volume, so you get more work with those heavy weights, right?
Yeah.
And then you should be, progressively increase weights on the bar and don't beat yourself up during the last several weeks of training. Make sure you're getting that heavy work, but don't burn yourself out to the point where you can't even complete your heavy work.
Yeah.
And then go to the meet, pick sensible attempts. Don't try to break any world records on the first attempt unless you're at that level where you don't show up to meets otherwise. And then do your best. But I guess one really, really big thing I'd like to say really quick is there's this idea that a lot of in powerlifting it's not as big because most people, the bro side or the science side, everyone's kind of figured out this is really stupid. But the typical movie montage of training for any competition that's important is that the fighter starts out here, the boxer or whatever, and they incrementally increase their intensity, sometimes exponentially, where they do really crazy shit at the end. And then boom, there's your competition right there. You're carrying the most fatigue you possibly can. So I think it's a good idea to remember that you should be the most fucked up on average if you're an average size powerlifter about a week and a half before your competition. You should be beat to shit. But then that last week should be much easier so that you get to the meet and you're still going to be as strong as you ever were. Strength does not fall off that quickly, but you're going to drop your fatigue so that you can actually express yourself.
Yeah, okay, cool. And what about someone doing their first bodybuilding competition as well? Would you have the same concept of kind of deloading just before that? So like the kind of peak weight?
It's a little bit more complicated. But you could definitely, the last couple of days, you shouldn't train hard because you want to be carb loading at that point, probably, eating plenty of carbohydrates so you can fill out or not come in flat. You don't have to do anything extreme, but you can probably eat plenty of carbs a couple days before. And if you have delayed onset muscle soreness, that actually muscle damage interferes with your ability to load glycogen into your muscles. So you're going to eat carbs, and they're just going to go kind of nowhere. They're going to go to your fat stores or somewhere else, and they're not really going to go into your muscles. So you'll be eating all these carbs, and you're like, oh, fuck, I'm not any fuller. So you should definitely ease up on your training, especially the second part of the last week. And for people getting ready for the first bodybuilding show, I would say this. Based on mistakes I've made, and I should have known better. Under the constraints I was working with, I think to me it was okay on a personal level, but definitely not something I would advise anyone else to do. If you think you're lean enough, get leaner. And pretend that your bodybuilding show is about 3 or 4 weeks earlier than it really is. Get in shape And then you can make fine-tuned adjustments like whatever. But if you're like, man, if you're a week out and you're like, man, if I could just burn another pound of fat, I'd be great. Fuck, man, you're done because you have to start loading carbs then, and you're done burning fat. So be ready early. For powerlifting, being ready early is fucking stupid because then you can drop off your peak and that's it. In bodybuilding, you can hold good conditioning for a couple weeks. Now, is it a good idea to be ready 8 weeks out? No, then you're just really catabolic for 8 weeks straight.
Yeah.
But 2 or 3 weeks, if you can come in shape, you can actually eat a little bit more food, recover some fatigue, get a bit fuller, and really, really rock. So I would say don't plan on being in shape for your first show on stage that day. Plan on it a couple weeks in advance. Would you agree with that based on your experience?
Definitely. I just finished competing and I was probably ready. Reverse diet out from my previous competition, competed, and I was probably ready about 4 weeks out this time. So it just meant that it was just fine-tuning posing and things like that coming in and just making sure I looked the best as possible on stage. And I think that was much better for my overall kind of mental state as well as how I presented on stage this time. So it was
for
great.
Sure. Totally.
In regards to peaking protocols for bodybuilding and stuff, what do you recommend in regards to water loading, salt variations and stuff like that?
Just a couple general rules. I would say that it's probably a good idea to reduce how much water you're taking in the last day or two before the show, probably more like a day. Because you don't want a lot of subcutaneous water. You certainly don't want to go out and get Chinese food and eat that and drink a bunch of water and show up looking like a balloon animal or something.
Yeah.
So you generally want to reduce your water pretty close to the show.
Yeah.
I see some guys drinking gallons and gallons and gallons of water like the day of the show or before, or guys stop drinking water like 4 days before the show. And one of those is just dangerous, actually.
Yeah.
But water manipulation doesn't happen really quickly, so just take a day or two of less water. And then you probably want to avoid eating a whole lot of salt right before the show. So the night before / morning of, a whole lot of salt with combination with water can bloat you up.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, you want to probably increase your carbohydrates somewhere in the last week.
Yeah.
You probably want to ramp up your carbohydrate intake from what it normally is because you want full muscle glycogen stores. And the cool thing about when your glycogen goes up is it actually pulls subcutaneous water out from under the skin and pulls it into your muscles. So if you eat more carbohydrates, easy on the salt, easy on the water, Saturday morning for your show, you're going to wake up looking interesting. You're going to be full yet crispy at the same time.
Yeah.
And for competitors that are able to use diuretics, those can come in handy. If you abuse them, you could die. So don't do that. And for natural competitors, I'm not quite sure I don't think alcohol is on is that on the banned substance list for natural competitors?
So you can still have it backstage and stuff. So some people have it. I do natural bodybuilding, and a lot of people will do that backstage. So just smash a glass of wine or something before they go on, just to get that bit of water out and have the effect of the alcohol.
Totally, and getting a little not drunk, but getting a little bit wasted the night before, especially on shitty wine, is a really good strategy. It works really, really well because what it does is it tops off your glycogen stores. Yeah, and in addition to that, it gives you a pretty good diuretic effect, and you wake up the next morning. So basically, you can wake up a morning after just getting drunk with your friends and be like, holy shit, I'm dry as fuck. Like, how did this happen? You're nice and full, too. It's a cool look. You can do that easily by just drinking some wine the night before a bodybuilding show. Also, side benefit, you get the worst fucking headache ever. It's great. But in all honesty, you have to deal with that. But the next morning. But however, another interesting benefit from consuming some alcohol the night before, not if you go overboard, you can get in real trouble because your tolerance at that point is basically non-existent. Is that it can help you relax and help you sleep the night before a show. And a lot of folks have trouble sleeping before a show. I know I do. That shit is exciting. Like, holy crap, I'm going to be on stage. It's fucking scary. Yeah. So, ideal world, if anything that can help me sleep the night before a show, that's great. And especially if I wake up much more dry. Yeah, cool. I can't say I've tried that one, but very interesting. Give it a shot. You know what? Best advice is to give it a shot just when you're lean and you don't have to bodybuilding show coming up. Just try it and see the next day, see how you wake up, and if you look great, you can try it again later.
It is a silly season. You can try anything on for all the Christmas parties.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you're talking about in regards to deloading before. So how important is deloading? So the majority, like if you're talking the bro approach in regards to training, they generally don't do a deload. They just do what they feel like. How important is deloading? And then I saw on your Facebook today that you're talking about how often you should deload. Could you go into that as well?
You mean just in normal, regular training?
Yeah.
So as you train, you accumulate improvements in fitness. You grow muscles get stronger, the nervous system abilities to make your muscles work improves, a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But with that comes along some fatigue and molecules where they're not supposed to be, micro tears in the musculature, depleted stores of glycogen in the muscle, nerves that don't work quite as well as they have some damage done to them because they've been overused so much.
Yeah.
And so every time you're going to improve your fitness, every time you hit your body hard enough in training to improve your fitness, which is muscle size, strength, anything, you have to be accumulating fatigue at the same time. They always go together, and here's why. An analogy is, how do you cook a good meal without dirtying up your kitchen at least a little bit?
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be insane, right? Can you imagine trying to keep your kitchen clean while cooking? It would be, well, first of all, impossible.
Yeah.
Certainly keeping the pots and pans clean while using them is impossible.
Yeah.
But it would just take an unbelievable amount of effort that you could better spend making the meal much better, and then cooking, and then cleaning after.
Yeah.
So the next question with that analogy is, let's say we cook one night and we clean pretty well. Do we have to deep clean our kitchen and have professionals come in and scrub everything down every night after we cook?
Yeah.
Well, fuck, I sure hope not. That stuff, the fumigation, it takes a day for that to go away.
Yeah.
So you got to take a day off of cooking every other day. So basically, is when every day we train hard, do we have to take the next day or two off completely? Well, of course not.
Yeah.
We can allow fatigue to accumulate for a while and still get away with training rather well. However, after some number of weeks, hard enough training results in an accumulated amount of fatigue. Nervous system is really messed up to the point where it actually affects your performance and ability to provide an overload again.
Yeah.
It starts to affect your ability to elicit adaptations. Intracellular regulators within the muscle itself, after a couple of weeks of high fatigue, or fatigue gets high enough, these intracellular regulators literally turn off muscle growth and turn on muscle burning, AMP kinase, for example.
Yeah.
These are not good things. The analogy for the cooking would be that you have such a disgusting, gross, dirty kitchen, you can't even find your utensils anymore.
Yeah.
Your pots and pans, your perfect example here is your pans have like crust of other shit you've cooked caked into them, and you're like, the fuck am I supposed to cook in this, right?
Yeah.
If you cook in that crust, everything tastes like whatever the hell was in there before, and it ruins the next meal you're going to make.
Yeah.
So after a while, you have to bring down the level of fatigue for no other reason than to make sure you have another productive several weeks of training.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to get in there into the kitchen analogy. You have to get in the kitchen, clean everything super crazy deep. You won't be able to train productively / cook for a day or two and let everything air out. And then you can come back and be awesome again for weeks on end.
Yeah.
And I keep coming back to this idea of weeks on end, something like 4 to 6 weeks on average.
Yeah.
Why is it 4 to 6 weeks? Well, if you have to deload every 2 to 3 weeks, then the ratio per year of time of how much you spend training versus recovering is fucked up. That's like working so hard at your job that you need to take every other day off. Well, your boss will fire you eventually. You're doing a great job, but we need you at work more often because you rest too much. You essentially take a third of the year off, right?
Yeah.
So there's no need to train that hard, and at that point, your level of fatigue accumulation to how much result you're getting is just kind of out of whack. That's like getting into your car and just stepping on the gas fully to go everywhere.
Yeah.
You'll get there pretty fast anyway if you don't slam it, but your car's going to last twice as long.
Yeah.
On the other hand, people say, well, I don't need to deload for 8 or 9 weeks. They're making a claim there. Yeah. They're saying that for 8 or 9 weeks, their fatigue has not risen high enough to affect their performance negatively, which they're secretly admitting something to you even if they don't know it themselves. That means for at least some of those beginning weeks, their training is so fucking easy that they don't accumulate enough fatigue for it to matter. And by definition, they're training so easily that they're not actually stimulating any gains. You know, if you and I were training partners, if I flew over to Australia and I said, hey, okay, aliens came down to Earth, they kidnapped the two of us, and they said, you fuckers have to train, no deloads, every day for the next year, or we're going to kill you. You and I would just do one set of 3 movements, 5 reps with our 15 RM, smoke a couple ciggies, and we'd be good. That'd be it. Yeah. And we could do that. How long could you do that for? Your entire life. You could do 1 year. I can do this for 10 years. I don't give a fuck. Because it's so under your overload threshold, you can totally recover. It doesn't generate enough fatigue, but it also doesn't get you any stronger. Would we improve? Fuck no. We get worse the whole time. Yeah. Now, if the aliens said, hey, you got to train hard every day and still get better at the end of the year, we'd be like, fuck, do you guys have any alien steroids for us to take? Which maybe they do, and maybe that would be awesome, right? Yeah, that would be really awesome. You come back like 80 pounds heavier, like, what the hell were you? It was alien steroids, man. I know no one's going to believe me. So reality matter is that, you know, if we are training appropriately hard, even at the beginning, to stimulate psi adaptations, we're getting all the way to training our hardest at the end of that process, and we're getting so much fatigue at the end that we have to take a week or so to drop it. Most people in most training circumstances, that'll be about 4 to 6 weeks of consecutive training. Is up to 8 weeks okay in some circumstances? Yeah, totally. Yeah. Is 3 weeks okay in some circumstances? Yes. But if you like train hard every week and every other week you deload, or if you don't deload for 12 weeks on end, looks fishy and you're probably doing some shit wrong.
Okay, cool. Can you go into the idea of maximal recoverable volume as well? So, and its implications?
Sure, of course. So maximum recoverable volume is a general theoretical term for how much training volume a certain individual can do and still recover from. But that's the most volume they can do and still recover from. Productive training occurs when you've done some work, you've recovered from it, and then you can go back and do more work until, of course, that whole process of fatigue comes up and you have to deload, right? So MRV is a little bit of a separate concept. We talked about, 4 to 6 weeks we're going to be training. Well, how hard are we going to be training during those 4 to 6 weeks? For example, let's say we could handle, 50,000 kilograms a week of work on average. We could probably crank out an average of 50,000 kilograms a week for about 4 to 6 weeks until we're like, fuck, we're too beat up, we need to deload. That's great. If we train at 25,000 kilograms, are we training below our maximum recoverable volume? Yeah, hell yeah. If we can survive 50, 25 is some kind of sick joke. So we're just not going to get that much better, right? We could certainly have gotten better if we just did more. On the other hand, let's say you fucking read way too many T Nation articles that day. You accidentally overdosed your pre-workout, and you're like, fuck this, 75K, I'm going to do it. So, multiply your volume by time and a half. Can you sustain that kind of workload for weeks? Fuck no, you'll break in like a week, right? And so then the maximum recoverable volume becomes really, really important as to that average figure of how much you're going to do every one of those weeks. That gives us that 4 to 6 week result. It's what's the most training you can beneficially do and still recover from to come back. It's not, what's a minimum amount to keep you progressing. That's another number altogether, which is very difficult to define in some instances. Depends on what you mean by progress. And then on the other end is, numbers that are way too high that will just cause you to overreach really quickly and then overtrain if you keep it up, and they're not beneficial. The reason the MRV concept is so important because it answers this huge question that has, I wouldn't say been eluding sports scientists for a long time, but some people make too complicated the answer to this question. This is a very simple answer. The question is, how much should I train? The answer is right around your maximum recoverable volume. Because if you train any less than that, we can make the critique about your training that you could be doing more. Imagine you just did a back workout. Some guy comes up to you at the gym, be like, what'd you do today? You tell him your workout, you're like, you could do more than that. I bet I do more than that. I grow more. And then you're like, fuck you, you're a bro, get out of my face. And you walk home and you're like, fuck, is he right? Could I have done more? Why the fuck, could you imagine if, let me ask you a question. How many sets per week do you do for back? On average, working sets.
Maybe 25 to 30.
25, 30. Imagine that someone was doing 10 or 15 sets. Someone with your equivalent genetics. and they hit the gym at the same time you did, and they left earlier. They're like, "Hey, bro, see you later. You're probably doing too much." You kind of look at them like, "I think you're not doing enough, right?" So, how much should that person train? Well, probably more, right? But can they train with 80 sets per week of back? Well, man, that's really probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
So the reality is that we want to train right at the most we can handle sustainably, safely, and productively for long term. That number, which isn't really one number, it's a range, is the MRV. And a very important thing about the MRV, every person under every different condition has their own MRV.
Yeah.
Trying to keep up with the Joneses is a very bad idea in bodybuilding for sure, and in powerlifting for sure.
Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman does not have your genetics. He takes different drugs than you.
Yeah.
And by that I mean he takes drugs, and most of your listeners probably don't.
Yeah.
So if you try to survive his program, you may find that it is so much work that it's way above your MRV.
Yeah.
On the other hand, some big bodybuilders are so huge, their muscles take so much time to recover that they can't really work as much as they did back when they were smaller. So maybe their MRVs would be lower. Some bodybuilders do these really low volume programs. Well, Marcus Rule used to train, moderate volumes, and he had a chest that was so big, he incline benched 500 for reps. How many sets of incline at 500 does he really need to stimulate growth? And if he does more, can he survive it? Well, of course he can survive it, but doesn't that mean we all need to stop at just 3 sets?
Yeah.
No, hell no. We could probably do more because we don't have that much physiology to disrupt. We can keep banging away because we can survive the work, right? So it comes down to this. MRV is something that is very personal. Once you find your general range, you're going to be playing a lot in that general range. If someone comes up to you and is like, "Hey, bro, have you tried this super crazy psycho workout of 150 total reps per hour until you bleed out of your face?" Maybe it's not a good idea for you to do that because you're like, what? Right around 70 sets, 70 sets, right around 70 reps per week on this particular body part is about everything I can do, and I know everything goes downhill after that number. I'm just going to go ahead and stick around that number, and that's exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah, awesome. In regards to different periodization styles, can you explain what a couple of different types are? So, like, say, DUP versus block and stuff, and which one's better?
Yeah. DUP is the best, man. Just DUP for life. I'm just kidding. I could say that with a straight face. The right kind of periodization is the one that people are currently talking about on Facebook, and it's getting the most likes, and that everyone is saying is the new best thing. So that's really the right kind of periodization. You have to follow the trends. If people are saying shit you don't understand, terms that you don't like, then you're obviously out of it, and you're not going to grow any muscle.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Again, with the jokes. So, there's Greg Nuckols and I have been fairly insistent on this, and this isn't really something that's debated much in sports science, just kind of in the unofficial, more layperson realms. There is no such thing as different kinds of periodization. There are different features of models, which some approaches emphasize more and some emphasize less.
Yeah.
Daily undulating periodization should probably be called daily undulating progression. It's also called intra-microcycle volume load variation. It's just a matter of enhancing the variability of volumes and loads. So maybe one day of the week you'll do sets of 5, the next day of the week you'll do sets of 7 instead of just doing 6s all the time. Yeah. You might change the loads by 10 or 20% here. And variations in volume load have been well supported in the literature and have been standard practice in most high-level sports science outlets for, 40 years now maybe. And this idea of linear periodization is something that exercise scientists who don't know sports science like to publish studies about, even though that's it's an esoteric concept. It's meaningless. Nobody's done it maybe since the 50s, maybe ever. Yeah. So pure linear programming is something that you'll only see in exercise science designs. So it's really the reality is this: periodization encompasses a variety of multiple different approaches and different techniques.
Yeah.
Undulation is one of those, or variation within the week, and is very important. It can be taken too far.
Yeah.
undulation of priorities from mesocycle to mesocycle, what's called block periodization, is absolutely effective. It definitely, if you're not varying your priorities from block to block to block, you're missing out for sure. Is there such a thing as doing too much differently block to block? Yes. Not enough? Also yes. The best program is probably one that looks relatively balanced. It's one that uses elements of all the different periodization models, though really it's just all part of the same thing. So, for example, is linear periodization bad? Okay, let's forget about that question next and ask, should there be some linearity to all program design? Fuck yes. If you want to get stronger, you got to fucking put way more weight on the bar at some point. Remember, Louis Simmons used to really brag that his programs are totally non-linear. Really? So they get easier as you go, or they're just completely fucking random? Like, who the hell gets strong from random shit? You've got to make things harder eventually, right? So all programs have some kind of line going up. Now, it's not a straight line, but the people who advocated a straight line maybe either never existed or died in the 1950s or something like that. Then the next question is, how much is it a good idea to include elements of undulation in your programming? The answer is, of course, yes. So, yes, your program should have a linear structure where it gets harder, but it should also have these volume intensity variations to promote recovery adaptation and to promote maximum outcomes. So you're stimulating really hard at one place and kind of relaxing hard, and stimulating and relaxing, so you get the best kind of structure to keep progressing. And then the next question is, should there be different blocks of emphasis, for powerlifting, hypertrophy, strength, and peaking? Yeah, there should also be some semblance of that. When you combine all those together, the result is what's called modern periodization. There's entire books written about it, including a book called Periodization. And that's the approach that almost all Olympic sport coaches around the world at high level take. It seems to be controversial in powerlifting currently because so few people do it, and also like this DUP came on the scene. DUP is good in its current kind of powerlifting fetishized form because it makes people do more variation, which they were underdoing. You have a program called 5x5. Who the fuck calls a program one fucking rep range and set? That's insane. Right? Really? 5x5 all the time? For years. 5x5? Really? All the time. 5x5. Wake up 5x5, go to sleep 5x5, coffee 5x5. Watch porn on your computer 5x5. I always watch 5 videos, 5 minutes at a time, right? So that's totally insane, right? So DUP is really good because it allows more variation. Now, some people took it too far. DUP, if you do sets of 10 or 15 earlier in the week, and then later in the week you do sets of 3 or 5, and later in the week you do singles, the result is that you're not training specifically for much of anything. So a better type of DUP is a more limited type in which you maybe do sets of 7 earlier in the week, sets of 5 middle of the week, and sets of 3 later in the week. It's kind of like mostly strength, maybe a little bit of hypertrophy in there. It allows you to train relatively hard to get good strength benefits, but enough volume to make sure your muscle size stays. That's probably the best combination of those practices. So DUP shouldn't be so extreme, but if you think the best kind of program is the exact same reps every single day of the week and every single week, that's probably wrong as well. So good middle ground there is the best idea.
Yeah, okay, cool. So it's more about the context of people's goals or the specificity.
Totally, absolutely, and you have to use all of the available manipulations. You can't say, well, I don't use DUP at all. You had better be using some of it. You say, I don't use my programs are non-linear. Really? A fucking clown designs them to just go nowhere, right? You can't have completely non-linear programs. And if you say, I don't do block periodization, like, so you do the same rep ranges every single day of the year. And that's been a little bit of a problem with this. Very few people do this extreme DUP, where like, how do you train? They're like, I do sets of 10 Monday, sets of 5 Wednesday, sets of 2 Friday. And like, okay, what about next month? Same thing. What about in 6 months? Same thing. Really? Are you peaked all the time? There's no strength phase, there's no hypertrophy phase. Like those things, those different phases require different situations. You don't ever alter your training. Like, people are like, it's DUP, it works the best. Like, you're really patting yourself on the back for having the most monotonous fucking training ever when we compare week to week. It's just within the week it's really exciting. That's news to me. So we should be using all of the different approaches. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, cool. In regards to the priorities for training, what do you think is the most important priority, and what are the least important priorities then?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's one of those where it really helps to look out at the world of powerlifting. Or would you like me to answer this for strength and powerlifting, or for muscle size, or which one?
Let's go strength and muscle size.
Okay, cool. So, for getting bigger or getting stronger, it helps to kind of look around at what all the really, really good people are doing. And they're doing a lot of things differently, but they're doing a lot of things the same.
Yeah.
And when almost every single person who's jacked or strong does does the same stuff, you can bet with a high degree of certainty that that's probably a good idea and a fundamental principle.
Yeah.
And you can look into the literature, into the mechanics of everything, into the way things actually work at the cellular level, and discover, this turns out it's important. So the most important component of getting better, the most important principle is specificity.
Yeah.
You have to know why you're in the gym.
Yeah.
If you are doing sets of 3 and you think that's going to get you bigger, you've got a real big problem, because you're going to be way too fatigued to accumulate the necessary volume to actually get bigger.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you want to get really, really strong and you're always doing sets of 12 or sets of 15, you're not going to get nearly as strong as you think you are, but you are going to get really, really jacked. The problem is you're never going heavier enough to stimulate your nervous system and your technical abilities to actually get much stronger.
Yeah.
So specificity is key. The next thing after that is, so first of all, do the right shit, specificity. Yeah. Second of all, make sure your training is fucking hard. That's overload principle. There's no way around it. There's no kind of fancy bullshit you can make. Everything okay on your end with the recording? Okay. There's no kind of fancy manipulations to make so that your training can become easy. There is no place for easy training in high-level sport performance. Overload means 2 basic things. First of all, your training should be hard enough that it challenges and stimulates your body to adapt. That whole thing we were talking about earlier, where if you have a 12-week progression without a deload, weeks 1 through 4 must have been some kind of sick joke for you to keep going for another 8 after that.
Yeah.
So they're violating the overload principle. It's not going to make you any better. On the other hand, so overload, first of all, has to be hard enough to make you change. And second of all, it has to get progressively harder over time.
Yeah.
You have to lift heavier weights. You have to lift heavier weights for higher volumes if you're a bodybuilder. If you go back and redo the identical workout you did from 3 years ago, and the identical sets, reps, everything, and it still makes you sore and it still makes you grow muscle, fuck, you did something really wrong in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Like workouts that I have 4 years ago, I could go and do them basically as warm-ups now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is whatever. This is easy. Right? You do it, nothing happens. You're like, so I need more than I did historically.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Here's the deal. I'm going to say one last super important principle, and all the other ones are detail. Yeah. Fatigue management is the principle probably most important after that. Yeah. You're going to beat yourself up training really hard, so every now and again you have to take a break somehow or another. The details on that are minute. We can get into them if you like. Here's the deal. Everybody, and I mean everybody good at powerlifting, strongman, Olympic lifting, or bodybuilding follows a very, very broad, very, very well specificity, overload, and fatigue management. There's not a single fucking person in bodybuilding who's trained hard every single day for the last 10 years. There might have been. That person's probably died yesterday or something like that, right? Just died right in the gym doing leg presses. That's it. Rep 59, keeled over and died, right? So, Ronnie Coleman was famous during his career for taking a month or more off of any formal training or dieting after the Mr. Olympia. And holy shit, that's how much fatigue he accumulated. He needed that much time with basically active rest in order for everything to heal so that he could go again.
Yeah.
Who at the high level of bodybuilding or powerlifting doesn't train hard? Is there any powerlifter that doesn't lift heavy? Fuck no. They all lift heavy. And is there any powerlifter that always does sets of 20 and then shows up and does singles at the meet? Of course not. Yeah. All powerlifters are sort of at their deep level familiar with specificity. Like, okay, I'm going to be doing 1RMs. I had better practice with some heavy weights, right? So as long as you hit specificity, overload, and some form of fatigue management,
Yep.
You're getting maybe 80, 90% of all the results you ever would.
Yeah.
Everything else, we talk a lot about the sports science-y in-depth details, all this bullshit about periodization, progression models. It's good stuff. It'll give you a couple of percentage points of improvement, and it'll especially make you better in the long term because you won't get hurt. Your results won't stop progressing. But all these little, hey, what's your favorite assistance exercise for chest? All these little minute details, they are, in fact, very minute details. As long as you train hard, as long as you train for your sport specifically, as long as you train hard, as long as you take breaks every now and again, those are the most important elements of getting bigger and stronger. So whatever it is you do in your manipulation, however it is you design training, always make sure to come back to those three. Ask yourself, is my training specific to what I need?
Yep.
A lot of training programs just get thrown out right away.
Yep.
That you can find programs on the internet like Become Better at CrossFit, volleyball, track cycling, and powerlifting at the same time. I'm like, really? Okay. You won't get that much better in any of them if you're doing that, especially if you're any good at them already, right? And an overload. Some programs look way too easy. And in fact, they are way too easy. You just won't get that really good. People say, you can get ready for powerlifting meet. I've seen some of this, like never lifting heavier than 85%. Well, really never, man, you show up to the meet, that 100% is going to feel like something you've never felt before. Yeah. Probably a really bad idea. And some guys who develop programs like that develop them because they're injured, they're hurt, and that's the only way they can train. Well, fuck, at least don't tell people that's the best way they should be training. Like, I understand you're broken, but you're broken, right? This is a special case for you. And then lastly, fatigue management. Some programs don't have any program deloads. You read a whole book about programming and it never says when you should stop or when you should take a break. That's really not a good idea. So when you're designing programs or looking for them, if they have specificity, overload, and fatigue management taken care of in some reasonable way, it's probably a good program. A lot of people send me Facebook messages or questions like, hey, is this a good program? I take a look through it. If it has all three, yeah, it's probably a good program. Is it the best program? Well, fuck if I know. I don't know what the best program is. But I can definitely tell you if it's a really shitty program if it doesn't have one of those three. And if it has one of those three, it's good, and it's up to you to fine-tune it to get the best results.
Yeah, definitely. And in regards to overload, how important is tracking your workouts then to be able to actually see that as well? Because a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm training really hard. And then I ask them what they've been doing, and they not even tracking volume or anything like that. So there's no way they can kind of quantify that they're progressing. How do you find that?
I think it just answers your own question, and you answered it very well and very truthfully. That's absolutely the case. Yeah, people say, I like to present an overload. How the fuck do you know what overload is? Yep. This is especially bad with people who have poor partial repetition technique on the lifts. Yeah. I'll give people ask, when you're the jack guy at the gym, people ask you for a spot on the bench and things like that. And they'll say, can you give me a spot? I'm like, okay, how many are you going for? And they're like, fight 4 to 6. And then I usually nowadays I make a habit of being like, okay, now I'm not going to help you out of these, right? You're going to have to do them yourself. I'll rack the bar for you if you get in trouble. Yeah. And they usually get this like puzzled look, like, can't you help me with some of them? And it's like, okay, here, you dumb motherfucker. If you don't do them and I do them for you, what do you write down in your little notebook? How many reps did you get if I did all the 5 or most of the 5? I can upright row, bragging time. I can strict upright row, something like, what is it? I'm trying to speak a kilogram language.
Pounds
65, 70 pounds is fine.
Yeah.
65, 70 kilos, so something like 150 pounds per set of 10. I can really help you out with your bench. I promise. I can probably upright row most of the weight for you.
Yeah.
What do you put down in your book? Did you get that 205 for 6? Was it really 205 for 4? What if I didn't help at all? And then they go down to their chest and they stop. Sometimes it's 4 centimeters above. Sometimes it's 2 centimeters. Sometimes they'll touch your chest. How the fuck do you know if you're overloading? Yeah. And I'll say, is this a PR for you? And they'll be like, yeah, I did 275 last month, but I don't think the guy was helping as much. And it's just like, fuck, why would you want to do that to yourself? Just go all the way down and just do your own reps. And then you can say, I got 8 repetitions today. Yep. Next week, I'll get 10, right? And then for sure you got better. So tracking is a must. Now, do you have to write every fucking little warm-up set, all that shit? No. Do you have to write the manufacturer of the machine, the humidity of the cables when you did it? No, but some general idea, especially in the compound basics. If you do a little bicep work afterwards and you do a drop set, you don't exactly write down how many reps you got on each set because you were throwing up blood or something like that because it was so hard. Totally cool, but at least on the basic compound movements, you should have an idea of where you are, which brings me to another really, really quick point. people ask me about how, so one of the questions I get relatively commonly is back development, because like my back looks pretty cool. It's kind of like freakish, big, gigantic or whatever, which is news to me because I never get to see it, right? It's only on pictures. I'm like, holy fuck, that's my back. I'm walking around that thing. Yeah. So the formula for a big back is a formula for everything else. It's really simple. There was a time when I could bent row 100 kilos for a strict set of 10. Yeah. All the way touching the ground and all the way back up. Now I can bent row 150 kilos for multiple sets of 10. Yeah. That's how fucking come my back is bigger. If I didn't plan sooner or later to hit 155 kilos, maybe eventually 160 kilos, there would be no making my back bigger. Yeah. Getting bigger in bodybuilding is a matter of staying within that 8 to 12 rep range most of the time. Yeah. And increasing weights. That's it. How do we, Ronnie Coleman, I've heard stories of Ronnie Coleman coming into a gym and doing full Olympic style high bar squats for sets of 10 with 585 on the bar. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. His legs look like that. It's the only thing ever that makes sense. His legs look like that. Yeah. So how do you plan to get bigger in bodybuilding? You track how strong you are for reps. Yeah. You can only know if you track and if you use good technique and don't fuck around. Yeah. And then you get slowly stronger for reps, and then eventually you have big muscles. To anyone who's listening, if you have issues with your back and you say, "Well, I'm already strong, but it's just the size doesn't come around," you work until you can strict bent row, pendlay style, with no swinging, 180 kilos for a set of 10. If you don't have a big back by then, I will fucking send you money. I will go on a trip and we'll train together and I will be your personal servant for a fucking day. Like, it's pretty much that straightforward. Yeah. So without tracking, I don't know. People say, I felt that workout really well. This is especially a problem in bodybuilding. In powerlifting, it's not the big of a problem, right? Because the sport is numbers, period. Yeah. You have to track. Like, fucking, you're going to have an attempt at some point, right? Yeah. In bodybuilding, this is I'd say there's a pretty big problem in the sport. Yeah, say, I had a really great workout. How the fuck do you know? I felt the workout was a good pump. Yeah. I felt my back a lot. And there's something to that stuff. Maybe 10 or 20% feeling, making sure that you're using the muscle. Sometimes guys pull with their arms instead of their back, and they use a lot of weight, but nothing happens with the back. There's definitely something to be said for that. But when people people will say things like, I don't ever pay attention to how much weight is on the bar. I pay attention to the feel. Like, really? Yeah. Never? Fuck, if I never paid attention to how much weight is on the bar, I'd never do any fucking heavy weight, because heavy weight is a pain in my ass. Yeah, it sucks. It's annoying. But I also wouldn't fucking be jacked. You got to pay attention to the weight on the bar and the technique and the feel and all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Rant over.
It was a good rant. I loved it. I totally agree. In regards to like specificity and stuff for, say, powerlifting and stuff, what about using chains and bands and stuff? What's your opinion on that?
I think it's great if you're an equipped powerlifter. Equipped powerlifting is a really, really tough sport, and it requires a whole lot of specificity. That's not like what you normally walking around picking objects up. They don't have accommodating resistance force curves. They have even force curves, and when you're lifting in a suit, it's really, really easy. Is probably a poor way to put it. You don't have to generate a lot of force at the bottom, as the suit does a lot of the work for you. Yeah. On the way at the top, you have to generate more force than you ever would raw, because it's a weight you would never be able to handle raw. Yeah. So bands and chains are indispensable to powerlifting training with equipment. Without equipment, I would say they're of limited to no value. Some people can get a little bit of something out of them, especially if you have trouble with lockouts. They can be okay. But most of the time for raw lifting, you should probably stick to the specificity of raw lifting and just use straight weight. Yeah,
definitely. And then in terms of like accessory work and stuff, so like board presses, if someone's at a weak point, is it better just to perform the specific exercise to improve weaknesses like in certain points of the movement? Or do you recommend people, like if they're struggling with lockout, to be able to work on specific muscles to be able to help that? So like doing board press or tricep extensions.
It kind of depends on your developmental age, but for people actively trying to bring up weaknesses, there's nothing wrong with making sure that you definitely have to do your main work. Yeah. You can't just like not stop benching for forever and just do lockouts, but there should be some attention, especially let's say you do your system bench. Afterwards, you can do some board presses, some close grip work, some lockouts, maybe some dedicated tricep exercises. If you're in a hypertrophy phase, you can do some skull crushers to make sure that your lockout improves. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. It just shouldn't be taking up the majority of your training. It should be an accessory like it's described.
Yeah.
A gun is an accessory to a tank. It doesn't take up the whole fucking tank. The wheels aren't made of guns, and the body's not made of a gun. The gun is stuck on top of the tank. So just the same way with accessory movements, you make sure your base is the good fundamental training that's going to get you strong. And then after you've done your base for the day, let's say 3x5 on the bench, you do another 3x5 or 3x3 with board press or close grip bench to make sure you work on your weaknesses. Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. In regards to nutrition, again, are carbs important, and what do you kind of think of ketogenic diets and the context? What context is a ketogenic diet beneficial, not beneficial?
I'm not really entirely sure what the magic of ketosis is. People speak of ketosis as if it's really effective for fat loss. How much fat you lose comes down to two factors: how much weight you're losing and how much muscle you're retaining. The balance of that will come out of your fat stores. If you losing weight is about calories.
Yeah.
If you create a calorie deficit, you will lose however much weight you create a calorie deficit with. And retaining muscle is about the ability to train hard and fuel your muscles while you are in a calorie deficit. Carbohydrates can allow you to train hard and recover for hard training next time, and they're also very anti-catabolic, particularly when consumed during workouts. So, or right after workout, you don't want to sit around for hours after workout not having eaten carbs. It's a very highly catabolic state. So the result is, how do you burn the most fat? The question of how do you burn the most fat is how big of a deficit can you generate and how much muscle can you spare? Well, diets with carbohydrates can allow you to train harder and probably spare more muscle than ketogenic diets.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever run no carbs knows that hard training is some kind of sick joke that it really just disappears altogether when you're on no carbs or super low carbs. So that's why ketogenic diets are practiced by very few bodybuilders, actually.
Yeah.
They had their little fad phase kind of in the 80s, 90s, and now they're very rare, actually. Will bodybuilders do days on which they don't consume carbohydrates? Yes. In the last couple of weeks, if they're out of carbs to cut, there's nothing left to cut.
Yeah.
You've cut all your carbs already because your calories are so low. Yeah, ketogenic diets work, but I don't think there's this magic of ketosis that somehow magically burns a ton of fat and spares a ton of muscle. I think that if you generate a calorie deficit, you fuel yourself with enough carbohydrates allowed within the calories to train hard, that's the best way to get lean. So I'm not telling you. And every now and again, ketosis comes back up as, oh my God, this fucking new magical thing. I think people are being really hopeful about something that's been studied into the ground. It has very few athletic applications.
Yeah, yeah. What about for general population people and just looking to lose weight? So if their goal is just weight loss, they're not doing massive amounts of training.
Yeah, if they're looking to do something very unsustainable that causes radical cravings to make you eat every single chip and cracker and piece of frozen yogurt in sight, great. No carbohydrate diets, even worse than low carbohydrate diets, have had really abysmal rates of long-term success. Nobody fucking lives with no carbs.
Yeah.
If you were on an island with no carbs, it'd be great because you can only eat so much protein and fat, and after that, you don't really want to eat food anymore.
Yeah.
So is controlling your carbohydrate and pairing it to your level of intake good? Yes. Should people who maybe aren't physically active so much, should they be eating hundreds of grams of carbs a day? No, but should you intentionally be slicing your carbs so you get these crazy cravings and shitty performance at work and poor mental clarity? No. One of the most absurd claims I've heard recently is the idea that two claims, actually. One, that fasting enhances mental clarity, and two, that eating a low-carbohydrate diet enhances mental clarity. This is the biggest fucking bullshit I've ever heard in my life. It is no longer talked about in the medical community. It is not a matter of debate that glucose is the preferred fuel of the brain.
Yeah.
So mechanistically, there is no debate. Secondly, can you imagine somebody coming up to you and being like, hey, man, I've got a big final exam tomorrow at 4 p.m. Do you have any tips for me on what to eat so I can be mentally clear? You're like, bro, I got this. Just don't fucking eat. Who the fuck says that? You'd be like, what, are you fucking insane? Of course not. Can you imagine an architect designing a building at work and be like, man, I did great work. I didn't eat this morning, and I had tons of energy and mental. What?
Yeah.
What? You fucking eat if you want your brain to work, and you eat carbs if you want it to work really well. It's crazy. So I don't even know where they make these people come up with this shit. It's not defensible in the literature. It's not defensible in reality. And if you like to do intermittent fasting or whatever, because you find that you like to eat a lot of food at night, and you can go throughout the day maybe consuming very little protein shakes or something to keep your muscle mass, that's totally cool. But don't pretend it enhances mental clarity and anything like that. You get some kind of weird high from not having any food. That's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
That is not the same thing as mental clarity. If I give you an IQ test when you've had carbs and when you haven't had carbs, you've had food and you haven't had carbs or food, you're going to perform better in pretty much every measurement of human ability when you've been fed versus when you've been fasted, almost every single time.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. We just got a question from one of the listeners. Can you make strength gains at a fast rate while doing Metcons? Obviously, they're doing a little bit of CrossFit. Yeah. What's your opinion on that?
You can make them faster if you don't do Metcons, but if you program intelligently and you keep everything within your maximum recoverable volume, that is the Metcons plus the strength, all add up to your real MRV and don't go beyond it, then you can make reasonable strength gains. And if you're a beginner or if you have pretty good genetics or you're new to dieting or new to really advanced good training, then yeah, you can make excellent gains. I think Alex Viada always likes to refute the myth that if you do any cardio, you're just going to turn into sloppy mess and lose all your muscle and make zero gains ever.
Yeah.
You can absolutely make gains. I do like 10 hours of jiu-jitsu or 8 hours of jiu-jitsu every week. And that shit is fucking crazy hard. It's the worst Metcon you'll ever do in your life. Somebody's trying to kill you and you're trying to kill them. And I make strength gains all the time. Are they as fast as I would be if I hadn't been doing it? No. But are they existing? Yes. So there's definitely a trade-off, but it can totally be a net balance.
Yeah.
A net positive.
Cool. So this is from the same person as well. So what about paleo? So obviously in the CrossFit community, paleo is pretty big for people who are not necessarily the athletes, but a lot of the general population, people who do it because it's obviously beneficial to them. What do you kind of think around the whole paleo thing? Who's it good for? Who's it not so good for?
I think the fundamentals, a couple of fundamentals of paleo are excellent, and the weird particulars are just needless.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, paleo advises to eat lots of meat, lots of healthy fats. I think most versions of paleo allow for lots of veggies to be consumed. And man, that's a good start for a diet. It's a really good start. Do we need to be consuming hundreds of grams of processed carbs every day? Of course not. On the other hand, some of paleo's recommendations are pretty close to nonsensical. They're against dairy for no damn reason. Dairy is one of the most health-promoting foods you can eat. It's a phenomenal source of lean protein, especially if it's lean dairy. It's excellent. Has a great effect on suppressing appetite. You think you can eat a lot of food, I can give you some low-fat Greek yogurt or no-fat Greek yogurt plain and be like, all right, eat 5,000 calories. You'll be like, you'll eat like 3 spoonfuls, and you're like, well, that's all I've had, right? Great for controlling appetite. So the dairy thing is a mystery. Being anti-whole grains is a mystery because whole grains are great. So does paleo have good features of a diet? Yes. Is it taken too far by many people? Yes. So if you're coming from paleo, just add some whole grain healthy carbohydrates before you train, maybe eat some in a couple of hours after you train, and you're on your way to a healthy diet. And you can even drink milk and have dairy products too, and it's no big deal.
Yeah, cool. Another question we've got here. Who do you follow online in the strength training and nutrition community?
Yeah, I follow myself. I actually just refresh my own page and read my own shit as if I didn't write it. I'm like, man,
I do that too.
This guy's good. You do the same thing?
Yeah, for you and for me. I do mine as well. I'm just like, refresh. Yep, that's still me.
So, who do I follow? I'm going to miss a bunch of people, and it's going to be a dick move. And when you publish this online, I guess it's already online. Then my huge apologies. A couple of people that I'll say this: I always pay attention when I can to the things they say because I put a lot of stock into what they say.
Yeah.
Brad Schoenfeld, Alan Aragon, Greg Knuckles always has very cool stuff to say. There's a couple other people floating around. There are some, what is it? Fuck, I can never remember the exact name of this group. Smart Training and Flexible Dieting.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say his name. Antanas Diamano, or it's a really fancy name that I can't say. It's really cool. Every time Antanas, Tiago, Vasconcelos Faliero, anytime those guys say anything, I'm always keen because they're really, really sharp guys. Yeah. I look at, I don't just follow sort of the big names. I've got a lot of friends on Facebook and followers that they're, can you see me?
No. There we go. All good.
Can you see me? Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Cool. A lot of people, so the guys I value are, yes, the people that publish a lot of research. Krieger is another one that comes to mind. Always look at some stuff those guys are putting out. Not just the big names, but people who are thinkers.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys find really interesting research from where I know, all over the place. And they're always open-minded and looking to enhance their knowledge. And that's really, really cool. And, every now and again, I'll click on big name bodybuilders and stuff. And then, it's cool. Look at the pictures. A lot of times they have really awesome ideas. The kind of thing is like, you can follow scientists and stuff like that and really big thinkers for really awesome theoretical knowledge.
Yeah.
But for practical applications, a lot of times following athletes is really cool. If I want to, a different movement for my back workout or arm workout, I'll look at some pro bodybuilders and be like, oh, holy cool, that's really, really sweet. If I want to learn some deep stuff about how hypertrophy works or something like that, then I'll read the publications of Brad Schoenfeld and stuff. And I have one more really quick thing to say is that a lot of these guys, following them on social media is really, really good. It's a good beginning.
Yeah.
But what's really cool is when you dig deeper into the textbooks they've written, the books they've written, their blogs or whatever. A lot of these guys have blogged. Direct Knuckles writes like a fucking article an hour or some shit like that.
Yeah.
That's where you get the real good stuff, the real deep stuff. Because on Facebook, I'm kind of famous myself for posting little fucking bullshit snippets of stuff. Yeah. There's good stuff in those snippets, but I've written people say oh, those are interesting thoughts about powerlifting. What do you think about this? I'm like, motherfucker, I have a whole fucking book, 400 fucking pages I wrote about this. Trust me, there's much more about this that I could say that would just bore you to tears on Facebook. So these guys that people follow, a ton of them are really, really awesome people. Juan Antonio Cortez has awesome little tidbits about personal training practice, like take-home tips for actual personal training. Great stuff. There's a bunch of other people, Amit Sapir, Chad Wesley Smith, Jason Pegg, tons and tons of guys who it's not just that they have those particular little social media outlets. They've put out a bunch of articles and a bunch of other stuff that I would really, really encourage people to go read that stuff in depth. That's how you really learn stuff, is reading the deep stuff. You can put the little Facebook tidbits into context if you've already read the deep stuff. Yeah. And then when the Facebook tidbits come up, you could ask those guys more particular questions because you already know the background of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you learn just totally novel shit from a Facebook or Instagram quote, you probably should do some more reading about that. So the next time a quote like that comes out, you're like, I know this already, but what about this more advanced thing? That's the best way to learn. Really try to look for that deep insight, deep material, rather than just learning only from Facebook tidbits, which I think is, probably not the best way to go. Like, hey, how do you know how to do this exercise? Oh, just I follow people on Facebook. That's it. Like, that's fucking really weak, right?
Yeah. So in regards to books you've written, what do you have out there? So you've got like the Renaissance Diet, and the strength training one as well. Do you want to go into a bit of detail about those? What's actually in those? Who are they for? So
Renaissance Diet is a basic book on dieting for body composition and performance. It basically teaches the fundamentals of how to build a muscle and burn fat. The Scientific Principles of Strength Training is a book that mostly applied to powerlifting, but applied to getting stronger in general. Yeah. It's an incredibly deep book. I consider it my best work to date.
It's extremely detailed.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, that was the idea. So I kind of wrote the book so that there's going to be all questions answered sort of thing. Of course, you never can answer all the questions, but I like the book. If you really want to know the whys of how to get strong, I would really recommend that book. Yeah. And then if you are female or if you coach females often, then we have a book out called Renaissance Woman. It's a female dieting book. It's longer. And probably my proudest moment of that, I didn't write the book. I co-authored it with two other females that also work for Renaissance. Yeah. But a big deal in that book was we wrote a lot about the psychological approaches of dieting. There's a lot of misconceptions on the psychological approaches of dieting, and particularly with females. Yeah, so that's a really good book to check out if you really want to get your psychological game up, not just your physiological game up in that respect.
Yeah, awesome. I'll tell you, have to get that one. Just a couple of closing questions. What do you think the biggest problem with the fitness industry at the moment? So obviously the trend at the moment is obesity is increasing throughout the first world. What do you I think the fitness industry is definitely part of the solution to that, but what do you think the biggest problem with the fitness industry is at the moment and not solving that?
People falling for gimmicks and fads. People thinking that getting fit is going to be super easy, or there's one weird trick. One weird trick is what's wrong with the fitness industry. I'll just stop there.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And where do you see the fitness industry going in the next few years?
I have no idea. If I did, I'd just invest in the right companies and make money off stocks. I tell you where Renaissance is going. We're trying to develop new products all the time. We've got a bunch of products in the works. I think, we're going to be writing more books. We're going to be writing a big book probably about recovery, how to recover from training. It's going to take a couple months to put that one out, probably more like a year. And we're going to be doing some big things. And there's a lot of people out there. I hope this prediction is correct. It's not a prediction. It's a hope that in the fitness industry, people will follow and read and learn from more of the people who are really thinking about fitness rather than selling bullshit products. So my hope is that Brad Schoenfeld has 80,000 followers next year, not like 15 or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
And people like that in general.
Yeah. So one of the good features about Facebook, which I've just found, is you can start to have certain people appear at the top of your newsfeed as well. So, like, you're one of those people. I have Alan Aragon, Brad Schoenfeld, a lot of those people that you mentioned. So it's really good, and you get that information straight away. And all their posts come up in that, which is good, rather than having to sift through all the bullshit and ads.
That's great. Come up. Yeah. So basically, put another way, I hope more people put those kinds of people at the top of their feeds rather than just bullshit artists, Mike Chang type of motherfuckers.
Yeah. He's good entertainment. Come on, you've got to watch his videos every now and then just to have a laugh.
I'm still looking for six-pack shortcuts, man. I'm still looking in the mirror. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. What is the best way for people to be able to get in contact with you?
Follow me on Facebook if you want pictures of shit I post, which I don't do very often. I'm not good at it. Instagram, at RPDrMike. Facebook, Mike Israetel. Follow me. Poke me, send me, pictures of your genitals. A lot of people seem to think that's cool. Just kidding. Don't actually do that. I've got plenty of those coming in already. So that's the deal there. And renaissanceperiodization.com. And you can search Renaissance Periodization on YouTube. We have some cool videos. And renaissanceperiodization.com. We're probably going to be doing a blog soon, but we've got books, we've got articles, we've got all kinds of stuff. And Juggernaut Training Systems. If you go into Juggernaut Training Systems, you could first of all read a bunch of really awesome articles that Chad Wesley Smith and his team put out, of which we're a part. And then you can also Google, you can search my name at authors at Juggernaut, and 15 of my articles or whatever come up, and I'm proud of all those articles, and there's some really, really good stuff in there. Yeah,
awesome. Great, thanks for that. I'm definitely going to buy that book you have on, the one for women as well. That's going to be a great thing always.
Cool.
To try and get that. So I've already got
thanks.
The strength one as well, so it's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your time. It's always great to be working with people and spreading their message of trying to get people to do more evidence-based stuff rather than the bro method as well, because it's still very prevalent in the fitness industry. So thanks again for your time.
Agreed. My pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks. I'll post this up today.
All right. Take care.
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening to Chasing Gains Radio. Another great episode. Be sure to like, share, and comment on this podcast to spread the Chasing Gains movement. Thanks again, and look forward to the next episode.
Perfect. Awesome. I look like I'm a gigantic blue blob floating in a fucking sky or something like that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Sweet. You're like this, like a god or something. It's awesome.
Yeah, right. All right. Thank you so much, and I'll chat with you later.
Awesome. Thanks again.
All right. Peace.
Catch up.